Extreme weather conditions in the Emilia-Romagna region left Formula One no option other than to cancel the sixth round of the 2023 season at Imola. Events in Italy's Emilia-Romagna region this week have rightly resulted in the cancellation of the Grand Prix at Imola. At the point the decision was taken, it was entirely feasible that the race could have taken place, but the importance of saving lives and livelihoods in the area was paramount. Here's our selection of some of the Formula One events of the past that have been badly affected by adverse weather conditions. 1966 Belgian Grand Prix. Spa is notorious for its changeable weather, and just 3 years earlier the 1963 Belgian GP had been desperately wet, dominated by Lotus maestro Jim Clark. In 1966, it was the sudden deluge that enveloped the field halfway around the opening lap that resulted in chaos, and provided a trigger to Jackie Stewart kicking off his safety campaign. Just 7 of the 15 starters filed through at the end of lap 1, and among those missing was the Scot, who was being extracted from the wreckage of his BRM by teammate Graham Hill and Bob Bondurant. They laid him in a barn, while removing his fuel-soaked overalls. 1975 British Grand Prix. The race had begun in the dry, with Carlos Pace leading in his Brabham before Clay Regazzoni took over for Ferrari. But a sudden rain shower just after one-quarter distance resulted in most of the field heading for the pits to switch to wet weather tires. One of those who stayed out on slicks was James Hunt, and, when the circuit dried out and those on wets returned to the pits for dry rubber, his Hesketh moved into a comfortable lead. A failing exhaust began to hamper Hunt, and at two-thirds distance he was overhauled by the McLaren of Emerson Fittipaldi, with Pace and Jody Scheckter's Tyrrell also moving in front. And then back came the rain. It arrived from the south of the circuit, meaning it hit Stowe and Club corners first. Tony Breeze, Scheckter, Pace, Hunt, Dave Morgan, Wilson Fittipaldi, Brian Henton and John Nicholson were involved in a pile-up at Club. Stowe claimed John Watson, Patrick DePaler, Mark Donoghue and Johan Mass. 6 cars remained on track. Emerson Fittipaldi headed for the pits for rain tires, returned to the circuit and encountered red flags. He was the winner, but it took 3 days for the result to be confirmed. 1984 Monaco Grand Prix. What happened in Monte Carlo in 1984 has gone down in motorsport folklore because it cemented a win for Alain Prost and denied chasing rookies Ayrton Senna and Stefan Beloff of what could have been their maiden F1 victories. Prost was leading in his McLaren from the fast-closing Tolman Hart of Senna and the even faster gaining Tyrrell Cosworth of Beloff when the Frenchman began gesticulating for the race to be stopped amid the worsening conditions. Senna was in the process of passing Prost for the lead along the pit straight at the end of the 32nd lap when clerk of the course Jackie X brandished the red flag. On results countback to the end of lap 31, Prost was given the verdict by 7.4s from Senna, who had carved 10.7s from the Frenchman's advantage over the preceding 3 laps. Beloff, in turn, was 13.7s behind Senna and had sliced 12.7s out of the Brazilian in the same period. X, as a factory Porsche driver in the World Endurance Championship, was condemned by some for his decision, which had resulted in a victory for a car powered by a Porsche-built engine. But there's no question that conditions were appalling. 2007 Japanese Grand Prix. Last autumn, the wisdom of holding the Japanese GP in October was called into question because of that month's perilous proximity to the country's rainy season, coming as it did just 3 years after qualifying had been shifted to race morning due to typhoon warnings. Indeed, the 2022 race resulted in utter confusion before confirmation arrived that race winner Max Verstappen was world champion. But such criticism isn't really fair, because Japan is always liable to be hit by sudden, heavy rain, whatever time of year it is. The country's maiden F1 GP in 1976, of course, resulted in that famous wet race at Fuji won by Mario Andretti for Lotus, and where James Hunt snatched the title from the grasp of the heroic Niki Lauda. In 2005 at Suzuka, wet weather played havoc with the one-at-a-time qualifying system in place at the time, resulting in most of the leading contenders starting towards the back of the grid and one of the greatest Grands Prix of the 21st century. Few could claim that of the 2007 running at Fuji. First, the circuit, back on the F1 schedule for the first time since 1977, was a shadow of its former self following a massive revamp. And then, for 42 minutes, the field droned around behind the safety car while officials worked out whether it was dry and safe enough to let the racers loose. Finally they did after 19 laps, and poleman Lewis Hamilton went on to take honors in his McLaren Mercedes from the Renault of Heikki Kovalainen, and apparently take a big step towards winning the world title as a rookie, since just 2 rounds remained. 2021 Belgian Grand Prix. The visit to Spa 2 years ago is a black mark in F1 history, not necessarily because of the torrentially wet conditions, but because of its abandonment after just 2 laps behind the safety car, ostensibly in order to fulfill obligations to ticket holders for some sort of race to have taken place. That was a shame, because Saturday's wet qualifying had featured some intriguing and exciting elements, none more so than George Russell stunning everyone by wrestling his Williams Mercedes onto the front row of the grid alongside the Red Bull Honda of poleman Max Verstappen. That, of course, is how they finished after 3 minutes and 27.071 seconds of racing behind Bernd Maylander in the safety car.